So you're aiming to really sculpt your body. Yeah, naturally. Build that muscle, torch the fat without anything. Well, artificial. You're definitely in the right place. Because the key drivers, they're your anabolic hormones. Powerful stuff. You've probably heard of some, but really getting how they work and how you can influence them naturally, that's where the real gains are.
Exactly. I mean, lots of people know names like testosterone or growth hormone. But our plan today is to dig much deeper. We've looked at the science, pulled out concrete, actual things you can do, focused on 8 key players: growth hormone, testosterone, thyroid hormone T3, specifically IGF-1, insulin, ghrelin, estrogen, and cortisol.
And here's what got me really interested. Our source material makes this pretty bold claim that by really dialing in these 8 hormones, you could potentially pack on 22 pounds of muscle while cutting fat, all without massive changes to your workouts or diet. Now, that's a big promise, but it shows the power we're talking about here. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with one that gets a lot of buzz, growth hormone, HGH.
Right, HGH. It comes from the pituitary gland, and yeah, it's fundamental. Muscle growth, fat metabolism, it comes out in pulses,
Yeah.
throughout the day. But things like high fatty acids, high cortisol, somatostatin, even high insulin can sort of dampen those pulses. When it is released, though, it gets to work, boosting muscle size, strength, endurance. And that's in both fast and slow twitch fibers, which is important. And
Yeah.
for fat loss, it can seriously ramp up fat burning, maybe up to 60%.
60%. Wow, okay, that's huge. So how do we get more of this flowing naturally? The source lists, what, 21 proven ways? Let's start with something relaxing, saunas.
Yeah, saunas.
Yeah.
And what's really notable isn't just that they boost HGH, but the potential size of the boost. We're talking like a reported 1,600% jump in just 3 days.
1,600. Seriously.
Yeah. It seems tied to activating heat shock proteins. They trigger the HGH release. Hot baths can help too, apparently, but maybe not quite as dramatically as a sauna. Oh, and a crucial point here. Excess estrogen. It can actually block those heat shock proteins.
Ah, okay. So managing estrogen, which we'll get to later, kind of indirectly helps HGH too.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Got it. Okay, switching gears. Weight training, we know it builds muscle, but the HGH link.
Oh, weight training is a potent trigger. HGH levels spike for several hours after you finish. But how you train really matters. Heavier weights are better. Exercises using multiple big muscle groups, think squats, deadlifts, more muscle, more boost. And shorter rest times between sets seem to help too. And here's something really interesting. The lowering part of the lift, the eccentric contraction.
Negative part, yeah.
Exactly. That seems to stimulate HGH release more than the actual lifting, the concentric part. The source even mentions some specialized eccentric overload stuff, potentially causing a crazy 7,000% increase for days.
7,000%. That sounds almost unbelievable. What's the takeaway for someone listening? Just lower slowly.
Well, you don't ignore the lift, obviously, but consciously controlling, maybe even emphasizing that lowering phase. That can be a really smart way to maximize the hormonal kickback, resisting the weight down.
Think so.
Now, beyond regular lifting, there's blood flow restriction, BFR.
Right, you mentioned that.
Yeah, using those cuffs during lightweight training. It can reportedly increase both the size and number of HGH pulses, leading to a mind-blowing 29,000% boost.
29,000?
Yeah, it creates this unique environment that really signals for growth. And a simple pre-workout tip, a vitamin B complex.
Really? B vitamins?
Currently, yeah, it can potentially amplify the HGH response by maybe 500%. Seems to work by helping manage those exercise-induced fatty acids and cortisol, which, as we said, can block HGH.
Okay, so heat, heavy lifting with controlled lowering, maybe BFR and B vitamins beforehand. What about outside the gym? Lifestyle stuff.
Absolutely. Body composition is big. Excess body fat means higher fatty acids, often higher insulin, and those suppress HGH. So as you lose fat, your HGH naturally tends to rise.
Okay, fat loss helps HGH.
Right. And fasting is mentioned too, specifically a 24-hour fast. That can boost HGH by maybe 350%, mainly because of ghrelin release. We'll cover ghrelin later. But, you probably wouldn't do that all the time, maybe every few weeks, to keep things generally anabolic.
Right, strategic fasting. Okay, what about something basic? Sleep.
Sleep is non-negotiable for HGH. Absolutely essential. Your biggest HGH pulse happens at night, right after you fall asleep.
Okay.
So if you're consistently cutting sleep short, you're directly hurting that key release. Aiming for at least 7 hours. That's minimum if you're serious about HGH.
7 hours minimum. Got it.
And here's a cool tip. Melatonin before bed. It might actually triple the size of that nighttime pulse.
Triple it. How?
Seems like it boosts growth hormone-releasing hormone and decreases somatostatin, which normally inhibits HGH.
Interesting. So prioritize sleep, maybe consider melatonin, anything we should actively avoid.
Yes. Alcohol.
Yeah.
It's a major roadblock for HGH. Even just moderate amounts can block up to 75% of your HGH release for a full 24 hours.
Wow, 75% blocked for a day. That's significant.
It really is. So if maximizing HGH is a goal, limiting or just cutting out alcohol is pretty crucial.
Makes total sense. Now, supplements. Besides B vitamins and melatonin, what else looks promising?
Quite a few, actually. Free amino acids taken as a supplement can directly trigger a big spike, like 700%. Mucuna pruriens, that's velvet bean, seems to lower fatty acids and cortisol, increase GHR, leading to a reported 600% boost.
Velvet bean, okay.
Then there's vitamin D, ideally with vitamin K for absorption. Vitamin D is kind of special because the source suggests it helps optimize all 8 of these hormones.
All 8. Wow.
Yeah, for HGH specifically, it might raise your baseline level by 71% over 12 weeks. And that highlights the difference. Some things give a temporary spike, like maybe creatine initially, but things like vitamin D can raise your baseline, which is probably better long-term.
Right, raising the baseline sounds more sustainable. What else boosts the baseline?
Carnitine tartrate. It helps burn fatty acids and reportedly increases baseline HGH by 68% over 6 months. Plus, it might help you absorb creatine better, so maybe some synergy there.
Carnitine, okay.
Ornithine, another amino acid, works directly and indirectly through melatonin and ghrelin to trigger a big, like 270% spike that lasts a couple of days. Arginine, also an amino acid, can apparently double your nighttime HGH release. And it enhances ornithine if you take them together.
Arginine and ornithine, popular in pre-workouts sometimes.
Exactly. Alpha-GPC is another one. Directly triggers a 200% spike.
Yeah.
And lastly, BPC 157. This one's interesting. It's a peptide. It might dramatically increase your HGH receptors by up to 600%.
So the HGH you make becomes more effective.
Potentially, yeah. But important note, VPC 157 is still considered experimental, so definitely do your own research before even thinking about it.
Okay, good disclaimer. Wow, that's a ton of ways to potentially boost HGH naturally. All right, let's move to the next big player, often called the king, right? Testosterone.
Absolutely.
Good.
Testosterone, produced mainly in the testes in men, smaller amounts elsewhere and in women. Crucial for muscle growth, strength, endurance, especially those fast-twitch fibers. They have lots of testosterone receptors. It also helps direct stem cells towards becoming muscle instead of fat. And it's big for overall well-being, even that feeling of reward after you exercise.
Right.
But here's a key point. It's not just about total testosterone. It's the free testosterone that really matters. The stuff not bound to SHBG, that's sex hormone binding globulin.
Free T is the active stuff.
Exactly. And you could be in the normal range, but have vastly different levels of free T. Someone at the high end might have like 5 times more usable testosterone than someone at the low end of normal.
5 times. Okay, so normal on a test isn't always optimal. So how do we boost total T, and especially free T? The source lists. 31 ways. Where do we even start?
Let's start with stress. Cortisol. That stress hormone really hammers testosterone. It messes with LH release, that's luteinizing hormone, the signal to make T.
Okay.
And cortisol can also directly block the testosterone receptors themselves. Makes your T less effective. Some research even suggests the ratio of testosterone to cortisol might be more important for muscle building than either one alone.
The TC ratio, yeah, I've heard of that.
So basically, anything you do to lower chronic cortisol, which we'll get into detail on later, should indirectly help your testosterone.
Makes sense. Stress is the enemy again? What about training for testosterone, similar to HGH?
Definitely parallels.
Yeah.
Weight training spikes testosterone, usually for about 24 hours afterwards.
Ugh.
And yeah, higher intensity, more muscle groups, shorter rest, focusing on that eccentric lowering phase, all seem better for the T response.
Yeah.
Likely linked to lactic acid. But, and this is important, don't overtrain. Too much volume can actually reduce the testosterone boost you get from a workout.
Right, diminishing returns.
Exactly. And BFR again, blood flow restriction, it pops up here too, can seriously amplify the T boost. Studies report up to 733% higher, even with light weights.
Man, BFR keeps sounding more and more impressive. What about body fat and T?
Really significant link here. Fat tissue has an enzyme called aromatase.
Aromatase, that converts T to estrogen, right?
Precisely. So more body fat often means more aromatase activity, means more testosterone getting converted into estrogen, lower T levels result. Plus, excess estrogen itself can suppress T production and increase SHBG, which binds up your free T.
It's a double whammy.
pretty much.
Yeah.
So losing excess fat and managing estrogen, which we'll cover, are crucial for optimizing testosterone.
Okay, leaning down helps T. Got it. What should we actively avoid?
Well, alcohol, again, not T-friendly, speeds up T breakdown, increases that conversion to estrogen,
Okay, alcohol's out.
and opioids. This is serious. They hammer LH release. Even a single low dose can apparently have your T levels for days. Chronic use can lead to major long-term T deficiency. The source actually shares a personal story about overcoming that. It really highlights how severe it is.
Wow, that's a really important point. Okay, what about sleep's impact on T?
Just like HGH, sleep is vital, absolutely vital for testosterone. Most of your daily T is released while you sleep. And for every hour you miss below that 7-hour mark, your T levels can drop noticeably. Around 6 points per hour, the source says. To put that in perspective, that daily drop from poor sleep can be bigger than the average yearly drop from aging.
Whoa, so skimping on sleep consistently really tanks your T. Okay, this next one's weird. Women's tears.
Yeah, it sounds strange, right? But the source mentions it. Apparently, women's tears contain pheromones that can cause a temporary drop in a nearby man's free testosterone, like 14% in minutes.
14% just from proximity. Huh,
Well, that's interesting.
definitely a unique factor.
All right, let's talk food. How does diet affect testosterone?
Several ways. High sugar intake. Bad news. It interferes with LH and T release. Can cause like a 25% drop within hours.
25% from sugar. Ouch.
Yeah, it's a big reason why poorly managed blood sugar often correlates with low T. On the flip side, soybeans contain DIM, that's diindolylmethane.
Yeah. It acts as a natural aromatase blocker, helps reduce that T to estrogen conversion. But its real power seems to be detaching T from SHBG. Reportedly, a 38% increase in free T in just 2 weeks.
2 weeks! That's
Right.
fast for free T.
Very fast, yeah, compared to a lot of other natural strategies.
Okay, DIM from soy. What else?
Velvet bean, again, Mucuna pruriens, also inhibits aromatase and it stimulates LH release. Result? A reported 39% increase in baseline free T over 3 months.
Okay.
Fish, especially oily fish rich in omega-3s, they might increase T release from the testes by about 20%. Seems you need a good mix of the different omega-3 types, though. And need fiber. A high-fiber diet is linked to about a 15% increase in T, low fiber. Can lower it by 15%.
Fiber again. Seems important for a lot of things.
It really is. And many people just don't get enough.
True. Okay, supplements. The market is flooded with T boosters. Most are junk. But the source highlights 9 with actual science.
That's right. Fenugreek gets mentioned as potentially one of the strongest natural aromatase blockers. Studies suggest it could double free T in about 8 weeks.
Double free T. Wow.
Zinc is interesting. It seems to help prevent T levels from dropping during intense training or overtraining.
Ah, protective effect.
Yeah, plus it lowers SHBG and helps T get into muscle cells. Overall boost reported around 87% in 6 months. But really important, stick to safe doses with zinc. Too much can be toxic.
Good warning. What else is on the evidence-based list?
Tyrosine. Your body converts it to dopamine. Dopamine boosts LH, and that leads to T. Reported 84% increase over 4 months. Plus, tyrosine has those cognitive nootropic benefits, too.
Right.
Tongkat Ali. That's another one, like DIM, that helps detach T from SHBG, freeing it up. It also blocks aromatase. Result? Maybe 47% higher free T in just 1 month.
Tongkat Ali.
Yeah, creatine. We know it's great for strength, but it also seems to raise baseline DHT levels.
DHT, the stronger form of testosterone.
Exactly. By about 56% in just 7 days, according to the source.
7 days is quick, too. What else?
Boron. Highlighted as being really good at lowering SHBG. Increases free T by about 28% and DHT by 10% in just 1 week.
Boron. Okay. Never really thought about that one.
Ashwagandha root. It's an adaptogen. Seems to boost LH and DHEAS. That's a precursor hormone for T. Reported 20% increase in T over 8 weeks.
Ashwagandha, yeah, popular for stress, too.
Right. And finally, vitamin D again. Especially with magnesium. Vitamin D binds to the Leydig cells in the testes, boosts baseline T long-term. Magnesium helps convert D to its active form and helps convert cholesterol to T.
Okay, multiple roles there.
Yeah, and together they also block SHBG. Reported 26% increase in free T in about 4 weeks. Need a good, absorbable magnesium, though.
Wow, that's a serious arsenal of natural tools for T. Any final thoughts here?
Just reiterating the value of testing. Get your baseline total and free testosterone checked. The source mentions a comprehensive panel, like the BLK one, which looks at multiple hormones, gives you personalized data to work with.
Good advice. Okay, let's shift focus. Thyroid hormone, often linked to metabolism, energy, specifically T3, the active form.
Yes, T3 is absolutely central. It controls your fat burning rate, how well you build muscle, your overall energy. sets the metabolic rate for nearly every cell. It's made in the thyroid gland using iodine, mostly released as inactive T4, then converted to active T3.
T4 to T3 conversion is key then.
Crucial. And unlike harsh diets, having enough T3 helps prevent cravings and that rebound weight gain. So it's vital for sustainable weight management. It also directly impacts muscle fiber type, pushes stem cells towards fast twitch, might even convert some slow to fast.
Really, it can change fiber types.
That's what the evidence suggests. Plus, T3 helps muscle growth by stimulating IGF-1, which we'll get to, and it massively boosts workout performance. Better blood flow, oxygen, nitric oxide, ATP production, better energy, endurance, pump.
Okay, so T3 does way more than just metabolism. How do we boost it naturally? 18 ways listed here.
Well, guess what? Saunas again. Regular sauna use can raise thyroid hormone about 30%, maybe by triggering TSH, thyroid-stimulating hormone.
Saunas are just all around good, huh?
Seems like it. And conversely, brief, intense cold plunges also stimulate TSH, boost thyroid hormone, and spike metabolism reportedly by 350%.
Cold plunges too. Heat and cold seem powerful.
Definitely. Lifting weights also gives a direct T3 boost, around 20%. Probably contributes to feeling energized after a workout. Moderate to high intensity, like 70% of your max, seems best. But interestingly, overtraining tanks thyroid hormone even worse than it tanks testosterone.
Oh, wow. So finding that sweet spot is critical.
Very critical. And guess what else helps? BFR training. Adds another potential 10% boost to the T3 response from lifting.
Okay, heat, cold, smart lifting, maybe BFR. What should we avoid for thyroid health?
Several big ones. Super low-calorie diets. They can wipe out maybe 2/3 of your thyroid hormone in just 12 weeks.
2/3. No wonder rebound weight gain is so common.
Exactly. Your metabolism just crashes. High cortisol is another major problem. It blocks TSH, blocks T3 production, and blocks that T4 to T3 conversion. Chronically high cortisol could slash baseline thyroid hormone by up to 63%.
63%. Again, stress management is key.
Absolutely. Excess estrogen is also bad news, interferes with T4 to T3 conversion, and can inactivate T3 directly. Alcohol. Toxic to the thyroid gland itself. Impairs function.
Alcohol just seems bad for everything anabolic.
Pretty much. And finally, the source mentions specific drugs and environmental toxins that mess with thyroid function. The guide has details.
Lots to watch out for. What about nutrition? How can we support thyroid through food?
Nutrition is paramount. Iodine is essential. Your body cannot make thyroid hormone without it.
Iodine, from salt or seafood usually.
Yeah, but interestingly, fluoride and chlorine in water can compete with iodine absorption. So, contrary to what some think, many people might actually need more iodine, maybe supplemental, but carefully dosed, of course.
Yeah.
Brazil nuts. Amazing for thyroid. Just 1 or 2 a day might give a huge boost up to 83% in 3 months, reportedly.
Just from Brazil nuts, why?
Super high in selenium, and selenium is crucial for converting T4 to active T3.
Selenium for conversion. Got it. Brazil nuts. What else?
Omega-3s again. They can increase the number of T3 receptors on your cells. Makes your T3 more effective. Studies show BMR increases from this.
Makes the hormone work better. Nice.
Vitamin D pops up again too. Boosts TSH, helps T4 to T3 conversion, prevents T3 breakdown. Maybe a 48% increase in 8 weeks. Tyrosine, we mentioned it for T3. It's also a precursor for T4. Can help raise P3 levels.
Tyrosine is versatile.
Adaptogens like rhodiola and ashwagandha help reduce oxidative stress in the thyroid gland. Could boost T3 around 45% in 8 weeks. Zinc and magnesium help prevent thyroid drops from overtraining and support that T4 to T3 conversion. And various B vitamins, B2, B6, B9, B12, all play key roles in thyroid function.
So a really comprehensive nutritional approach is needed. Any final thyroid advice?
Yeah, same as with T. Get tested first. Check your baseline levels before you start trying to boost things. Too much thyroid hormone is also a problem. A full panel gives you the real picture.
Important caution. Okay, next up, IGF-1, the hypertrophy hormone.
IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. Yeah, definitely earns that name. Super potent for muscle growth. It's actually on the WIDA prohibited list. That's how effective it is.
Wow.
Beyond muscle, it's interesting. It helps grow new neurons in the brain. Good for memory, cognition.
Brain gains, too. Cool. Where does it come from?
Mainly the liver, triggered by growth hormone, but it's also made right inside your muscles, triggered by both growth hormone and thyroid hormone.
So boosting HGH and T3 automatically helps IGF-1.
Exactly. Many strategies overlap.
But are there direct ways to influence IGF-1? 19 listed here.
Yeah, while boosting HGH and T3 helps, and BFR seems especially good for IGF-1, like 5x more effective than other methods, there are direct things too. Those cold plunges, they can directly spike IGF-1 in the muscle by about 210%.
210% in the muscle itself. But you said timing matters. Avoid right after workout.
Yeah, there's some thinking that immediate cold exposure might blunt some of the initial muscle protein synthesis signals right after training, so maybe wait a bit.
Okay. What inhibits IGF-1?
High cortisol again. Can lower muscle IGF-1 by 60%. High estrogen blocks about 50% of IGF-1 release from the liver. And alcohol strikes again. Can potentially have IGF-1 by hurting the liver and raising estrogen.
Man, cortisol, estrogen, alcohol, the usual suspects keep popping up.
They really are interconnected antagonists to anabolism.
Okay, what about supplements that directly target IGF-1?
Essential amino acids are vital. Can increase baseline muscle IGF-1 by 50% in 10 weeks. Conversely, being deficient drops it 30% in just 3 days. Shows how critical they are.
Wow, fast drop.
Magnesium helps long-term baseline production in muscle, about 30%. Arginine can directly trigger muscle IGF-1 release like 200% spikes. Zinc helps liver production and helps HGH bind better. Baseline increase maybe 47% in 6 weeks.
Okay.
Fructose, as mentioned, helps muscle uptake of IGF-1 from the liver by around 44%. Vitamin D and carnitine help baseline liver production maybe 25% in 3 months. And omega-3s and fenugreek can decrease binding proteins that tie up IGF-1, potentially freeing up 30% more in 2 months.
Lots of levers to pull for IGF-1 too. Okay. Shifting gears to insulin. Sounds tricky, right? Good and bad.
That's the perfect way to put it. Insulin from the pancreas, a double-edged sword. It responds to glucose and amino acids. Its anabolic job, shuttling those nutrients into muscle cells. Fuels growth, stops breakdown, especially in slow-twitch fibers.
That sounds great.
It is, but it does the exact same thing for fat cells. Promotes fat storage, stops fat breakdown.
Ah, there's the catch.
Exactly. So the key is timing and sensitivity. You want low baseline insulin generally to limit fat storage, but you want strategic spikes around workouts to flood muscles with nutrients. You want high insulin sensitivity.
Right.
That makes your cells respond better, keeps baseline low, makes spikes more effective.
Low baseline workout spikes, high sensitivity. Got it. How do we achieve that? 15 strategies here.
Cold plunges again. Can improve sensitivity by maybe 43% in just 10 days.
How do cold plunges help sensitivity?
Seems to increase glucose transporters, activate brown fat, lower inflammation, multiple mechanisms. Intense exercise, consistently, can double sensitivity in about 3 months.
Okay, exercise is key. What about pre-workout?
Free amino acids are great here. They directly release insulin and increase sensitivity. And you need those aminos available when insulin spikes post-workout for maximum muscle benefit. Free aminos get there fast enough.
So aminos pre-workout are good for the insulin response too?
Yes. Ornithine also directly releases insulin, potentially big 400% spikes. Carbs obviously spike insulin because they become glucose. So timing carbs around workouts, maybe with those aminos, is a strategy. Carb loading, essentially.
Okay, cold, exercise, pre-workout aminoscarps.
Yeah.
How do we keep baseline insulin low outside the workout window?
Carb timing is crucial. Concentrate them around workouts. Avoid big carb meals right before bed, like the last 2 hours.
I avoid carbs before bed.
High nighttime insulin can interfere with that big HGH pulse during sleep. If you do have carbs at night, melatonin might help. It seems to block insulin release a bit, but improve sensitivity.
Interesting trick with melatonin.
Zinc supplementation might lower baseline insulin about 26% in 4 weeks. Maybe by helping convert white fat to brown fat. Akkermansia, that gut bacteria, getting a lot of buzz, significantly increases sensitivity. Triggers GLP-1, which helps regulate blood sugar and appetite.
Akkermansia, I've heard of that.
Yeah, and there are other supplements detailed in the guide that help lower baseline by improving sensitivity. Oh, and boosting ghrelin, the next hormone, can also help lower baseline insulin because ghrelin inhibits insulin release.
See, it all ties together. Okay, let's talk ghrelin, the hunger hormone, but sounds like it does more.
Absolutely. Ghrelin gets pigeonholed as just making you hungry. It's released when your stomach's empty. But it has really significant, often overlooked anabolic effects. For instance, every 10% increase in ghrelin corresponds to a doubling of growth hormone release.
Doubling HGH. Wow.
Yeah, and through that, more IGF-1. Ghrelin also helps activate those heat shock proteins we talked about for muscle growth. And it's considered one of the best hormones for preventing muscle loss. Any kind of muscle loss. That's why it's sometimes called the secret to aging muscularly.
The secret to aging muscularly. Okay, now I'm listening. How do we tap into this?
Longer fasts, like those 24-hour ones, trigger big ghrelin boosts, often around your usual meal times. Important distinction. Intermittent fasting, like daily time restriction, can actually lower ghrelin over time. This is about longer, less frequent fasts.
Okay, so 24-hour fasts used sparingly.
Right. And intense workouts, while they might dip ghrelin briefly right after, seem to increase your baseline ghrelin by about 30% over 8 weeks or so.
So strategic fasts and consistent hard training. What about supplements for ghrelin?
Several interesting ones. Vitamin D and omega-3s, again, can increase baseline ghrelin about 50% in 8 weeks, but they also seem to boost anti-hunger hormones like leptin, so you get the anabolic benefit maybe without feeling hungrier.
That's a neat trick.
MCT oil, big ghrelin booster, like 67%, but it boosts anti-hunger hormones even more, 188%. So net effect is often less appetite, could be great for body composition.
MCT oil. Okay.
Acromantia again. Boost baseline ghrelin up to 50% in 8 weeks, while also suppressing appetite via GLP-1.
That acromantia sounds like a powerhouse.
It's getting a lot of research attention. Curcumin from turmeric can give a temporary 40% spike, maybe by reducing stomach cell stress. And zinc and ornithine can trigger smaller, temporary 30% spikes, possibly by stimulating stomach nerves.
Okay. Lots of ways to influence the hunger hormone for muscle benefits. Let's move to estrogen, but specifically for men. It's not just female, right?
Absolutely correct. Men naturally produce estrogen, mainly by converting testosterone using that aromatase enzyme, which lives mostly in fat tissue. The problem isn't having some estrogen, it's having too much.
And why do men get too much?
Higher body fat is a big one. More fat means more aromatase. Exposure to estrogen-mimicking chemicals is another.
Yeah.
Alcohol use. And sometimes, if testosterone levels go up a lot, the body tries to balance by converting more to estrogen, unless you take steps to manage that conversion.
Right. So why is excess estrogen bad for men?
Several reasons. As we've hinted, it can lower other key anabolic hormones, HGH, T3, IGF-1. It promotes fat gain, water retention. It can weaken connective tissues, tendons, ligaments, increasing injury risk.
Weaker tendons. Ouch.
Yeah. And it's even linked to higher risk for certain cancers. But crucial point, men need some estrogen for bone health, libido, other things.
So you don't want to crush it completely.
Exactly. Get tested first. See where you are before you try to lower it. You might actually be fine or even too low already.
Okay, tests first. But if levels are too high, what natural strategies work? 22 listed here.
Well, since aromatase is mostly in fat, the #1 long-term strategy, lose excess body fat. Less fat, less aromatase.
Makes sense.
Or avoid alcohol. We keep saying it. It increases aromatase and it damages the liver, which needs to break down estrogen.
Okay, alcohol is just bad news hormonally.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Also, minimize exposure to chemical estrogens, xenoestrogens. They're in plastics, pesticides, personal care products. It's a huge topic. The source guide has way more detail on avoiding them.
Right, environmental factors. What about diet?
Cruciferous vegetables,
Right.
broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, they contain I3C, indole 3-carbinol. I3C helps your body break down estrogen better, clear it out, can lower baseline up to 45% a couple months.
Eat your broccoli.
Basically. Curcumin again. Studies show it can cut estrogen production by about 33%. Plus, it has anti-cancer effects, especially against estrogen-related ones. High-fiber diet helps too. Binds estrogen in the gut, helps excrete it, maybe lowers levels by 28%.
Fiber, cruciferous veggies, curcumin,
Okay.
supplements.
Many work by blocking aromatase. We mentioned some, we're talking T boosters.
Hell yeah.
Cindy Greek, Dim, Tonkat Ali. They lower estrogen and raise T.
The dual action ones.
Exactly. And finally, support your liver detox pathways. The liver breaks down estrogen via different routes, some good, some bad or ugly. The source lists 8 specific nutrients that help push estrogen down the good pathways and block the ugly ones. Critical for healthy balance.
Wow, managing estrogen seems complex but doable. Okay, last one, cortisol. The stress hormone. We need it short term, but chronic high levels kill gains, right?
Precisely. Cortisol from the adrenal glands, triggered by ACTH from the pituitary, it's your fight-or-flight hormone. Mobilizes energy, breaks down fat and muscle for fuel. Suppresses non-essentials like growth, those short spikes. Necessary. Waking up, dealing with immediate stress. But chronically high baseline cortisol, that's what devastates anabolic hormones and overall health. Lowering that chronic level is key.
So how do we lower chronic cortisol naturally? Looks like a lot of strategies here too.
One simple one, bright sunlight, can lower cortisol up to 20% in minutes via a neural pathway. Even just being outside, seeing the horizon, greenery, that helps reduce cortisol too, beyond just the sunlight effect.
Been outside more. Okay. What about training?
Intense training briefly spikes cortisol. It's a stressor. But consistently training smart lowers your baseline cortisol significantly, maybe 50% in 8 weeks, if you avoid overtraining.
Yeah.
Overtraining keeps cortisol high.
Right. Train smart, recover smart.
Exactly. And exercise also makes you more resilient. You release less cortisol in response to mental stress later.
Bonus benefit. Okay. What else?
Saunas again? Temporary cortisol spike from heat, yes. But then endorphins and heat shock proteins kick in, suppress ACTH, leading to a baseline drop of maybe 40% in just a week.
Saunas for the win. Again, meditation.
Yep, regular meditation, even just a few minutes, lowers cortisol temporarily. And even just 5 minutes of structured breathing exercises can be surprisingly effective. The guide has specific techniques.
Breathing exercises. Very accessible.
Totally. Also, boosting your other anabolic hormones helps control cortisol. Testosterone blocks cortisol receptors. HGH inhibits ACTH release.
They fight back. Good. What to avoid?
Alcohol increases ACTH, raises baseline cortisol, dose-dependent, caffeine, stimulates ACTH, spikes cortisol, and makes your cortisol response to other stressors bigger.
Limit the caffeine, maybe.
Might be wise if cortisol is an issue.
Yeah.
And sleep. Crucial. Every hour under 7 hours is linked to maybe 12% higher baseline cortisol.
Sleep keeps coming up as fundamental.
It really is. And just general common sense stress reduction. Saying no, avoiding needless arguments, it all helps.
Right. Lastly, supplements for cortisol.
Several show promise. Curcumin again blocks ACTH and cortisol release, big temporary reduction possible. Melatonin, great antioxidant, lowers baseline cortisol maybe 72% in 2 weeks.
Melatonin does a lot.
Vitamin D blocks cortisol production, lowers baseline maybe 40% in 2 weeks. Vitamin C helps block cortisol release from chronic stress. Free amino acids lower exercise-induced cortisol and baseline cortisol too by boosting serotonin. Ashwagandha lowers ACTH, blocks brain receptors, drops baseline maybe 28% in 2 months. Rhodiola and tyrosine seem good at preventing spikes from physical stress. Flaxseed and tyrosine might help keep it lower during mental stress. And magnesium and zinc help stop cortisol staying high after training through different mechanisms. Magnesium might even help reverse age-related cortisol increases.
Wow, magnesium for age-related cortisol. Interesting.
Yeah, the guide has more detail on all these dosages, timing.
Okay, that was an incredible deep dive. We've covered a ton on these 8 hormones and how to nudge them naturally. It's clear there's so much more we can do beyond just the basic diet and exercise advice.
Absolutely. When you understand these interconnected systems, HGH, TET3, IGF-1, insulin, ghrelin, estrogen, cortisol, and use these targeted science-backed strategies, the potential for real sustainable gains in muscle and fat loss is pretty huge.
So for you listening, think about this. Which of these areas really jumps out at you based on your goals right now? Maybe boosting HGH for overall growth, maybe dialing in testosterone, optimizing thyroid. This deep dive gives you that roadmap. We really hope you'll explore the strategies that make the most sense for you.
Yeah, this was definitely comprehensive. And as always, keep digging deeper into the research on the things that interest you most. Optimizing your body's natural potential. It's a journey, right?
Yeah.
Continuous learning, trying things out.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. What if really understanding and strategically optimizing these internal regulators, these powerful anabolic hormones inside you right now, what if that's actually the most powerful, the most sustainable way to hit your long-term fitness and well-being goals?